I'm a retired teacher. I am a vice chairman of the Lockerbie Old School Community Project. I am passionately involved in the project, and would love to see the old school be transformed into community hubs so that we can get back to using the building that I used to work in and see it back to some sort of repair and use in the community. It would be really nice for that. I worked as a home economics teacher from about 1974 to 76 in the Lockerbie Academy, which was actually the main building of the school that is now knocked down in Rockwool site. And when I left school, the school when I had my first child, there was actually at that time there was a very large shortage of teachers. There wasn't many spare teachers, and they needed to have a lot of supply teachers to fill in gaps. So during the time from when I had my first child onwards, they would call me quite often to fill in for supply teaching, and quite often I was in the old school building where the English department was and the learning support department, and I taught English and learning support in that old school building. So I'm quite familiar with that school. So I worked in the old school on supply from on and off from about 1978 right through till about 1982. I did a long stretch of learning support teaching, as it was actually called remedial at that time, rather than learning support, and we were up in the front part of the school, right up at the top of the building, up right at the top, and you could see right the way down the street, and it was really quite an attractive place to work. It was quite a nice place to work. So that's really when I worked there. Well, it was completely different from what it is now. In fact, when we first got, as a committee, when we first got the chance of getting the keys to go into the school, to look at the inside of the school, I felt really disorientated. It was difficult to imagine. Just because the rooms had been divided up, the floors had been divided up. At the front of the school, when you look at the school from Townhead Street down towards the main building, at that time when I taught, there was just two floors. There was the ground floor, and then there was the upper floor, and there was two rooms on the upper floor, and a colleague and I talked in the two rooms up at the top. Whereas now there's actually three floors. They've subdivided the rooms, and they've made the rooms are quite small now. Whereas my image of the rooms that we taught in, but they were huge. The ceilings were really, really high. They were very airy and bright. Whereas they're much smaller now. They've all been subdivided. The other thing that I remember a lot is that when I taught originally in the school, we had a Wednesday afternoon for the senior pupils. We taught a subject, or we had a subject called EFL, which was Education for Leisure. And for the senior pupils, they could opt for a variety of different leisure pursuits, sporty or craft subjects and whatever. And I had a badminton class in an old hall. The central part of that building was actually one big hall, and we used to have a badminton class in there. And now there's no hall, there's not a big hall, it's all been divided up and made into different sections. And it's, as I say, I felt completely lost when I went into the building, because none of the things, the only thing that is still the same is that the staff room, when I taught there, is up, you know, a single room upstairs, and that was about the only thing that I really recognised was the staff room, where I spent many hours filling in the crossword and never getting as many clues as another person that's going to come in to be interviewed, called Arthur Johnson, who's a very clever man, and got all the clues too quickly, and I was always a wee bit behind. But, it was, for all that it was an old building, it was quite it wasn't a dreary building, you know, it was quite an alive building, because sometimes old buildings can be quite, can feel quite stale and dead. It didn't feel that way. It was still a living building, if that makes sense to you, because sometimes they do feel quite, I taught in Glasgow quite a bit during my teaching practice in various different old buildings, and some of them felt really done and as if they should be knocked down, whereas that one didn't ever have that feeling about it. And another we had badminton, but we had a badminton club for the staff on a Friday night in the same hall, and that was, I've got good memories for that as well. Very much so. That there would be probably about maybe 70 of us. Yeah, I got on. The staff was very friendly. It was very good. But then I'd taught in different parts of the school, so I knew quite a lot of the staff tended to stay the same over the years. I taught Irish Board English. It was in the music department for a while. Obviously mostly home economics, because that was my subject. I went anywhere. The headmaster at that time, his theory was that when you went in as a supply teacher, you went not to supervise a class, you went in to teach a class, and that if you were a teacher and an adult, then you had more knowledge than a child, so that you could teach. So that you should be able to impart something to the children. So that was what I did, because I was bored if I was just supervising a class. So there was more trouble. Oh, modern languages. Now, modern languages are very, very bad. I had always wanted to be a teacher. I had opportunities when I was, I'm sure it's not relevant really, but I was offered a training when I was 16. I was offered a training in a different field altogether, management training, which was a very good opportunity, but I was determined that I was going to continue on and carry on at school, do my hires and go into teacher training. It was just something that I'd always wanted to do. And I did debate. I was very keen in geography, but I decided that I really wanted to do a practical subject, because in a practical subject you get so much closer to the people that you're teaching. You know, you do have a link with people that you're teaching, because it's a hands-on thing, you know, when you have contact with people. And I really did not regret teaching a practical subject, because when somebody says "Mum" in the classroom, you know that you've made some kind of contact. There are downsides. The violence in school can get a wee bit bad at times, but when I first started teaching, it was a completely different subject to when I finished teaching. Although I believe from what people have said recently is beginning to start just going back a bit. But when I trained, it was called Homecraft, and we taught. It was much more what you might call. It was cooking and sewing, and that's what we taught, was cooking skills and sewing skills, and that's what I was trained in. And then, when I first started teaching, my first job, I had female pupils, girl pupils, and that was it. And then I was offered a job in Lockerbie, and one of the reasons why I was offered the job at Lockerbie was because there was no technical teachers. And they had to fill a post, and the job I was offered was, I had the whole of the first year, and it was mixed classes. Well, actually, I'm telling you a lie, it wasn't mixed classes. I had boys classes and girls classes, and I had to give a course of home economics to the boys and girls, and that's when I started doing a nutrition class for boys and girls to try and teach them the good eating, proper eating sort of thing, like what a balanced diet was and whatever. And that was simply based on the fact that they couldn't have a technical teacher, so that they had to have something to fill the timetable in. And that was actually ahead of its time, because of course over the years everyone took all the subjects, and there was no difference between what the boys were taught and what the girls were taught. And in fact, I don't know about your experiences, I've no idea what your experiences were, but I found that a lot of the mixed classes worked out as well, and I found that some of my most successful pupils were the boys that I taught, were every bit as enjoyment. I got every bit as enjoyment out of teaching the boys as I did with the girls. So it worked out in the end that that's the way that the world went anyway. So I must admit, one of my lowest points in my whole teaching career was a mixed class, where they decided a mutiny, and they started throwing flour around the classroom, and that was it. When that happens, there's nothing anyone can do, no matter what kind of teacher you are. It just doesn't matter. You've probably seen it, maybe not with flour, but you've probably seen it in some subject or somewhere along the line. And I stayed in the room obviously, but I locked the door, wouldn't let them out. It was just before break time, and I just kept them there and let them get on with it, and then made them stay there until they cleaned it up. They didn't move. And I think they got the idea that they weren't getting it. The more mess we had made, the more they had to clean up. But generally speaking, I didn't have much problem until the very end, and then I won't go into that, but anyway, I did enjoy my teaching very much, and I was very sad to leave teaching, I must admit. I do see a lot of the pupils through the community. When I left here, I went down to Annan, and I was down in Annan from 89 till I retired. And so that's quite a long time that I was away. But people in the community down here, my daughter's here and my grandchildren are here. So I meet through them, I meet pupils and their children and what have you. And a lot of them will call me, Mrs. Moffat. And I say, or people I work in the Red Cross shop, and people will call me Mrs. Moffat. And I'll say, I'm not Mrs. Moffat, I'm Jackie. And they'll say, but I can't stop calling you Mrs. Moffat because you taught me. And I'll say, but I'm not a teacher. I stopped being a teacher a long time ago. I'm not a teacher. I'm Jackie. But they still find it difficult. And I try not to be a teacher. I try not to be, because a lot of people who, when they're a teacher, they're always a teacher. I try not to be, although sometimes people say that, oh, you've got your teacher bit. And I try not to. Well, I think you can't do it nowadays, but there's one or two that stick in my memory. Quite often, quite impish people. I tend to like impish people rather than goody people. But people like, there was one boy who had a fairly short haircut at that length, and it sort of tended to be quite wiry, and I used to go like that with his head. I said, you don't mind? He said, no. So, but you couldn't do that nowadays. But just one or two who stick in my mind. But I wouldn't say that I had a favourite pupil, no. But lots of nice memories about people, right. That far more nice memories than, mind you, having said that, you probably remember one or two of the bad ones, but there weren't that many. And most people are bad because they're bad because of reason. There's reason something. Well, at the very beginning of teaching, the teaching career at the start was a much easier process than it is now. When I first started teaching, you didn't have the pressures of paperwork that you have now. You sort of wandered into school maybe 15 minutes before the bell went, and then when you were finished and you'd cleared up and what have you, went home, and that was really about it. The only thing was that when I started teaching, we took more, if you had a register class, as it was called then, you were more frontline guidance with that register class. You were more involved with the children the pupils that you had, and that they would come to you more with things that were going on. Whereas over the years that's changed, and that as you have more contact with your guidance teacher or whatever, and the person that, that's the way that things are worked out now, whereas in my early teaching day it was more with your registered teacher, so you were kind of involved that way. But it was a much easier system, whereas as time has gone on, the workload has become heavier. Well, almost 11 years now since I retired, but it has become heavier and heavier and heavier. Even the reporting system is just so much heavier, and the demands and things were getting so heavy. And when I had the children, I went back very quickly after both children, because I like teaching. I like working, I like teaching. I don't like sitting at home I don't do housework. It's boring. So, come on, who wants to dust it? But I used to bring the work home, and then when the children were in bed, I'd do the work after. I'd come home still early, but I would do the work after the children were in bed and catch up on the paperwork and the reporting. Because you tend to think, well, a practical subject, there's nothing much, but you've still got the marking to do of the homework and setting other homework and preparing things like that, plus the kind of internal, I'm not sure how much it all goes on, but with exams and things now, the internal element that they do rather than the coursework that's done internally now, that's got to be prepared and mart and things. You know, so it is so much heavier now than it was then. That a lot more sort of responsibility for the pupils. You know, it wasn't just not just the teaching, but also the element of marking and things. I was trying to remember. In fact, I was talking to there was a lady with a picture in the paper yesterday, which reminded me about another club, and I remembered a photograph that had appeared in a school photograph, and I was trying to remember what club it was. We had like from the staff point of view, we had a curling club, which went for years, and that was really good. And we used to play the pupils had, you know, I think we probably still did. They still have a curling club? Pupils? Yeah. Because we used to play a curling match at the end of the season, you know, against the pupils, which was quite funny actually. I don't know whether you still do that. I don't know whether it still happens. But the staff curling club used to. Well, it was great fun. Really enjoyed it. And then we would very carefully get our stones up into the rink and what have you, and try and get near the centre of the rink, what have you. And then the pupils would come along, and all they did was knock everything out. Different attitude, much more aggressive, things like that. That was good. And trying to think what else. Oh, we always had a staff pupil hockey match. Which is quite funny because I hated hockey at school, but we always had a staff pupil hockey match, which was an annual thing. The one at that time, I don't think Lockerbie was a particularly rugby orientated thing. The girls played volleyball. Well, both boys and girls played volleyball. In fact, they had a very strong volleyball team, the girls especially. I say that because my daughter won the regional volleyball team. She was on the team for all the years that she was at school. She won the regional winners. And hockey, of course. But they were more football orientated rather than hockey than rugby. Down at Annan there were more rugby, I think. I'm trying to think. I do remember one instant when I had the pupil education for leisure afternoon in the hall at the old school. There was one boy who he wasn't that bad really, but he was a bit mischief. And you know the gym, no, is it the horse, but no, the box thing, you know it's like got a leather top. His habit of always disappearing into it. As soon as your back was turned, Duncan wasn't there anymore. Yeah, you knew fine well where it was like hide and seek, but you know, like when children play, little children, you know, they go and hide behind the same thing, and you've got to see where's Finlay, and you know fine well where he is, because it's always the same place, but you've got to pretend that you don't know. Oh, he did that every week for a while, but it was just one of these things. Well, I remember, let's think, I remember from my school days, which was about the time when the Beatles started. We used to go and practice the twist. I don't know what they did at playground at the time. They had, at lunchtime, we had we had the dining hall. And Lockerbie was quite, I don't know how well, Lockerbie School, of course, was quite a, the academy, because you had the academy, and then you had the annual, it was really the annex by the time I taught, which was, the old school building. And the old school building was used for the overflow classes, really. The things like the dinners and things, lunches and things like that were held in the main building. So that took, and by the time you got your school lunch, that had taken up quite a lot of the time, because by the time you'd got queued up and eaten and what have you, it took up quite a lot of the time. There wasn't a great deal of playground space, if I remember rightly, because by the time you got the bus park at the back, and then the car park at the front, and then there's the division between the old school, which was that building, and the new school. There wasn't a great deal of actual space around. I don't actually know what the pupils did. Outside my home economics class, there was an area which had a beautiful silver birch tree, which I've watched from over the years. I watched from being quite a small sapling, right, growing up, and it grew up to the stage where I couldn't see the top of the tree. It was just, just the trunk. Because it had grown that tall. But it was, but I can't really remember what they did. I think they hung around in groups, and what do you do? Just hang around in groups and talk? It's the old school building itself is a place which has been it's such an old school, it's such an old building, it's been there for such a long time. It means a lot, there's a lot of history in that building, in that it's, a lot of people have been through that building. When you start talking about the building to people, the number of people who have got stories attached to that building, who will say things about it, and have got memories about the building. To see it slowly rotting away, to me, is a sin. I think when you look at so many towns and cities and villages, you see so many buildings that are just haphazardly demolished. And I think it's so wrong. I don't mean perhaps, I wouldn't say that it's the most architecturally beautiful building in the world. I'm not suggesting that. I just think that there are parts of places that are memory filled and that should be preserved simply for that. I think a town's character's built on old buildings. I think you lose something if you demolish them. I think that also, I think that the town would, not just the town, as we said, as I said to you, it's not just Lockerbie's community hub. I think that Lockerbie is a place where we could do with having somewhere where people have got a centre. The town, we've got the town hall, but it's not like a centre for people to use the way they want to use it. And that's where I feel that the building has got that, we've got that chance that we could have a building where people could just use that building the way that they want to use it, and that they could say, like, I want to have this in it, or I want to use it for that purpose, or whatever. So I feel that it's worth trying to save it and to establish some kind of community centre in it. And I think it's one of these things that we tend not to talk about, and it's probably too early for you even, because maybe you're too young to really think too much about it. But the town went through such a great crisis when we had the plane crash, etc. And you've got a garden down at the cemetery, etc. Or not a garden, but a memorial down the cemetery. But so much went on in that building about the plane, after the plane crash and things like that. It's part of the history, And I'm not saying that we would ever celebrate or anything like that, the plane crash, but it's part of that history of the building, is the fact that a lot of the investigation went on in that building. Things like that. I just feel that it should be kept and retained. Fellowship. Youth. And hope.